who we are and what we do in the world economy, in the world safety, all of those things get strained depending on how we present ourselves to others. Do we promote strength and unity? Do we maintain our relationships with people we've been allies for, regardless of the external noise? Do we hold true because of our values? Or do we shift those values because of money or other aspects that we become beholden to?
So today, I have a treat for you. I'm bringing before you Toby Hansen, preeminent leader, executive, and founder as well. Very robust history in military police. So we're going to get into some legal, we're going to get into some leadership, we're going to be talking about branding, and of course, we're going to be talking about strategy, succession planning, and how to become iconic and live in your authenticity. Toby, welcome to the podcast. Why don't you just
having me.
Tell everybody a little bit about who you are, what you do, and, the origin brand story. From whence did you come?
So, thank you for having me.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a kid from upstate New York. Mom worked at a grocery store. Dad was a corrections officer. So my law enforcement background started when I was a kid, hearing stories. I didn't really know what I wanted to do in life, but I wanted to be impactful with whatever it is I did. And I decided to make the transition to serve my country. So right out of high school, I joined in between my junior, senior year and went into the military right out of high school and spent over 20 years in the Army. It was a great time. Wouldn't change anything for the world. But upon retirement, you're always caught in this vortex of, now what do I do when I grow up? Because the military is so structured, you don't have to think about a whole lot. You know where you got to be, what you got to wear, when you got to be there. The job that you do is the job you do, but there's not a whole lot of external planning that needs to happen. You don't have to go buy a wardrobe and be present and prepared for certain things. You have to learn tasks and skills, and you have to lead other people well, which is why I feel so passionately about leading. But there's not a whole lot of external. When you transition out into the corporate environment, there's a stark difference in how you navigate the waters of those two separate things.
Very good, very good. So you said 20 years Army, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so thank you for your service, of course.
My pleasure.
You know something about branding and leadership? It's extremely interesting. This is a very interesting dialogue. As Toby's speaking, I'm just laughing to myself because upstate New York, Harlem, New York. I always say the old Harlem, right? Father was in corrections. My father was in the streets, right? So he grew up hearing stories about legal. I grew up hearing stories about the corners and, our different upbringings. But here we are 30 years later in the same setting, talking about leadership and branding and building businesses and helping people to go to the next level in leadership. It's really a full circle for me just to be here. So just your background and that little brief synopsis just really made me appreciate education, experience, and expertise, and growth, right? God, growth, service, servant leadership. Speaking of leadership, what is your school of thought when it comes to leadership? So let me ask you this, because this is a language that people may be familiar with. What is your favorite style of leadership?
I'm a very direct leader. I don't feel that beating around the bush when you're trying to teach, coach, and mentor other people is beneficial to them. Because then they're trying to figure out what you meant. You have to be direct, but be tactful. be respectful, and deliver it in a message at the level that they can receive to learn, not the level they receive to feel as though you're dictating to them. There's a stark difference between being a empathetic, emotionally intelligent, direct leader and an authoritarian.
Okay. So more of a situational leadership. They speak about conditioned as well, conditioning leadership. I like situational leadership because a lot of times so you know about wartime leadership, I'm sure. When there's a certain situation within an organization, they'll bring in a specific leader with the specific skills for that situation.
Correct.
And then when maybe wartime is over, they'll switch them out because they don't have the right conditioning for peacetime. Right? So there's a specialist. But there's also being almost ambidextrous with your leadership style and being able to switch and knowing how to pivot and have different styles of leadership. So I'm sure in your military experience, there was a need to be able to go back and forth and kind of be situational with your leadership.
I feel that my leadership style is a direct reflection of what I did in the military, right? The military is viewed in two ways: at home and at war. Well, as an MP, as a military policeman, we didn't have a break in between those two things. When we deployed, we had our deployment mission that we continually did while we were deployed. But when we came home, we went right back to working the streets as a police officer on the base. So you would have to turn those leadership capabilities on and off and be able to functionally mold how you interacted with people in leadership styles in both situations.
Most important thing that you learned in service?
Listen more than you talk, and don't question. It's hard when you don't understand the why, but you have to action what was said.
Hardest lesson learned?
Standing up for what's right, regardless of how it will affect your career.
Good one. Very good. Heavy on the MVPs, morals, values, and principles. What does brand mean to you?
A brand is where your internal values, the culture that you were raised in, and the things that you hold strongest, that's what your brand should be. The brand is who you are internally. It's not who the world wants you to be externally.
Very good. Authenticity, authority, very good. How easy has the code switch been, or the pivot from private and police to public and personal?
As you go up in rank in the military and you gain more responsibility and you lead more numbers of people, it transitions easier than if you get out at a lower level. So young men and women that join the military for a few years, it's a stepping stone into their career, is a little bit different than somebody that was in the military and served for 20 years and have navigated their way through leadership difficulties and opportunities and then come out and get into the corporate world. So your ability, for me personally, my ability to understand where a senior executive that I'm dealing with in a corporate environment, I equate that to someone I dealt with in the military at the level I was at. It wasn't a hard transition. However, they're much different when being political and interactions with people cannot be as direct in the corporate world. It's much different. You have to ensure that if something happens, you don't go, hey, this is what happened. This is what we need to do to fix it. there's a more massaged and easier way of blending those two things together in the corporate environment, whereas in the military, it's here, this is what happened, fix it.
Direct.
Very. Because we understand that in whatever environment, if you don't understand that, lives are at stake.
Super clear. No room for interpretation.
There is no room. In the corporate environment, much different. There is room for interpretation. Nobody's going to die tomorrow for the decision you made today sitting in a corporate boardroom.
Very good. Very good. Interesting dialogue, interesting conversation, interesting perspectives. How many countries have you served in?
Ooh, good question. South Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, Bosnia, Kosovo. I've been to Germany. Was there only there for a little while. Haiti, 2010 after the earthquake. So seven or eight.
How many war arenas have you been a part of?
Afghanistan, Iraq were the major conflicts, but the others were peacekeeping missions or humanitarian aid missions. So
very good. I just want everybody to be clear that when we say leadership or examples, evidence-based examples, we're talking about earned experience, not just learned experience, because there's a difference.
There is.
One is interpretation, one is theory, one is theoretical, one is case studies, and then one is the subject matter expert, the person who the case study is built upon, and spectators who then pontificate or replay in their heads what they think happened and give, we're very serious when it comes to authenticity and integrity. So I'm not really beholden to having third-party spectators talk about things that they haven't lived. I'd much rather I think that one 15-minute segment from learned experience is better than 15 months of theory, right? So I just want everybody to understand that the gravity of the matter. So we've got learned experience, we've got earned experience. You did something interesting. What's your bachelor's degree?
Homeland Security with a focus in area and port security.
Okay, so you learned about what you were doing and you went deep into it, and then when you came home, you chose to pivot. What did you pivot into specifically?
Learning and education for adults. I was a director of learning and development for a while after I got out of the military, which was very fulfilling for me. Being able to teach other people how they can be better, giving them the tools to be more effective and efficient in their job and grow to the next level. I get a lot of happiness about seeing other people succeed from the things that I've taught them.
Servant leadership.
Yes, sir.
Servant leadership. How important do you believe that education is to someone's business, brand, life?
I don't think you as an adult should ever stop learning. It can be on different levels, right? I'm not saying you always have to be in school, sitting behind a desk or in college. I feel that if you're not reading something that can make you smarter, if you're not picking up a skill that can either be an attribute to yourself or your community or your family, then you've stagnated. You've reached a point where you're like, essentially you think you know everything. You're good. And no one is that way.
That's interesting because as soon as you stop learning, you start declining, right? I used to tell people because where I come from, people would say I'm maintaining. You ask somebody how they're doing, they're like, I'm maintaining. And it's like, okay, well, if the earth spins at a fantastic speed consistently and we're held by gravity due to the spinning rotation, then if you're maintaining, you're holding one position while the earth is moving forward and time is moving forward and seasons are moving forward, you're actually losing or regressing the moment you stop moving.
And others will pass you by.
Just by nature, right?
just by nature.
We talked about education, and I always talk about setting the table. So you want to set the table for the next wave, the next people that come. You know, everybody wants to be motivational, inspirational, and say, you know, if I can fall down and look up, then I can get up. You know, I believe that hope is not a strategy and we play chess instead of checkers, right? So you want to set the table strategically for that which you welcome into your life and into your business next. And you said that you had the bachelor's degree in Homeland Security and you went deep into that field. And then when you came home, you got the master's certificate in e-learning specifically. And now you're moving into corporations and doing leadership succession planning in corporate. What's that like?
Energizing. You do something for so long, and when it's over, you have to find your next purpose.
Hold on, pause. Right, underline that, guys. Say that again.
You have to find your next purpose.
Very good. Go ahead.
I didn't feel that continuing in law enforcement or down that path was the purpose I had. So it took me a little while. As I said before, you got to learn what you're going to do when you grow up after you get out of the military. And it took me a while to really feel where my passion and purpose was. The ignition of that fire was when I worked in learning and development. And I saw the positive, motivational influence that I could help other people to find their purpose. And I said, you know what? I have something to give. And that's how I view my brand. Is it's not a receiving, it's a giving brand, because I want other people to succeed, whether it's a small business, an entrepreneur, a large corporation, mid-level, doesn't matter. Anything that I can do to make your leaders better, to help the overall success, is a win for me. They're winning, but internally for me, it's my win too.
That's right.
So that's how I shifted from a much different career of law enforcement, security, mindset into leadership development. And
what does leadership mean for you?
Well, the Army version of leadership has been drilled into my head so many times, but I feel it's so true. It's to provide purpose, direction, and motivation for someone or a group of people to complete a common goal and or mission. Right? And that's the military version. But in the civilian world, you're trying to do all those things, provide purpose and direction and motivate people. But leadership is also giving them the tools to do those things, right? It goes back to the Bible. If a man is given a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach the man to fish, you feed him for the lifetime. My goal is to teach people to fish so that they can grow for a lifetime, not just give them one piece and leave. I want to build lasting relationships with people and companies to continue their growth moving forward.
And your specialization, you were speaking on being succession planning specifically. What is it about succession planning that resonates with you so deeply?
I think in today's society, with COVID and the separation of social media, of direct interaction like we're having now.
That's right.
I'd say this lightly. Younger people have some conflict with leading others. They can lead themselves, but if you put them into a position where they have to lead 2, 3, 4, 5 other people, they're not ready for it. They haven't designed and grown into a position through life where they have those skills. And large companies, even small companies, there's a huge focus on upper echelon leadership because they're the staples of the company, but they won't be there forever. So how are you building that company to succeed far into the future from the leadership down below in the lower and mid-level leaders that are at some time in the future going to be those executives and C-suites.
I'm thinking of a couple different things. I'm thinking of the $1 trillion transfer, right? I'm thinking of the huge transfer of economy. I'm thinking of the gray revolution,
Okay.
right? Because a lot of business owners are baby boomers and now they're segueing out. And I'm also thinking of the younger generation and how it's stated that they jump from job to job. The locust generation, the grasshopper generation, they say that they don't stay within one organization for more than 2 to 3 years. And if someone stays 5, they're looked at like something is wrong. And the morals, values, and principles have changed.
True.
Social media was meant to bring people together, but it's actually pushed people apart. You see people walking into each other. No communication whatsoever because everybody's scrolling. And so personal, the personal brand almost has become impersonal, right? And I'm interested to know what your thoughts are on the secession plan that is taking place in the country. What are your thoughts on the leadership right now in the current state of leadership?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
I think that every leader has a vision. Our current president has already sat in his position. In 100 years, there's only been one other president that has had 2 terms separated by another president. Right? So he's had the opportunity to do it once, expecting to do it a second time right after, back to back.
That's right.
Didn't happen.
Okay.
I feel if his terms had been back to back, I don't necessarily think things would have gone the same as they're going right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that his direct focus currently is to reset America on a corrected budgetary path. We haven't balanced a budget in this country in decades. Every year, we spend $2 trillion more than we bring in. That's why our deficit is so high. So if we can trim the fat, so to speak, to bring that down and or start reversing the process, why not do it? Spend 20 years in the military. The amount of money that the military spends for items is way higher than you should spend for items. And the government typically does this across the board. There was a bag of clips that go on, I can't remember what aircraft it was. The bag was literally like this big for $90,000. They're metal clips. They're pressed. It probably took them an hour to press that bag of clips for $90,000.
Nice.
Right? Now, the business that those clips came from,
Beautiful business model.
happy.
That's right. Of
Right?
course.
That's cost versus reward all day. Return on investment, very high. Should we, as a country, should our tax dollars, 90,000 of them go to a 1-pound bag of metal clips for a military aircraft? I don't think so. But we have somebody that's willing to go, no, the system has been broken for a while. Our system. Our country is the greatest country in the world. I would not live anywhere else. I would not have served anywhere else. But we have flaws. Just like anywhere in the world, we have flaws. If we collectively are not willing to talk about and work on fixing flaws, then we're doomed to continually repeat. What's the definition of insanity? To do the same thing over and over and expect a different result.
Very good.
This
Very
4
good.
years, everybody's expecting a different result because he's got nothing to lose.
But you can't get different results unless you do something different.
And for the first, how many days are we in? He's been doing something a lot different.
I would agree. Like it or love it, leadership is being courageous enough to be disliked.
I would agree to that.
Hard decisions that require brass, metal, fortitude, courage to be distinctive. These are the things that create, shape, change the world that we live in. Legacies, families. I say that word again, legacies. America's a brand. This country is a brand. Make no mistake about it. It was incorporated, right? So there is a brand and there is what is the purpose of a business? The purpose of a business is to create a profit and for transacting for value,
Yes.
right? So as a brand and having stood behind the brand, edified the brand and protected the brand for 20 years, what is your idea of America as a brand?
Well, I think in my 20 years in the military, it changed. It shifted. But the military, just like anything else, any major business will change. So America as a brand to the world, I think is held not at the highest standard it used to be. If you go back to World War II, the world looked to us for strength and unity, and to protect when all others wouldn't or couldn't. And we gave our best to protect others. And we still do. The way that we go about it is much different. Our relationships that we have with the world is much different now than it was even 20 years ago. It was much different. At times we struggle because of who we are.
When you say who we are, that takes it from macro to micro.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you mean by that? Because of who we are.
We as Americans think we're the best. Rightfully so. But it comes at a cost. Our thought process of who we are and what we do in the world economy, in the world safety, all of those things get strained depending on how we present ourselves to others.
Communication.
Do we promote strength and unity? Do we maintain our relationships with people we've been allies for, regardless of the external noise? Do we hold true because of our values? Or do we shift those values because of money or other aspects that we become beholden to?
Interesting question. Interesting perspective. DEI.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on DEI?
I'm not a fan.
Okay. Why not?
I think you just treat people the way they should be treated. And I think that the value...
He kind of smiled. When I said DEI, he just kind of smiled like, yeah, go ahead.
I think that the value that you hold on someone, right? Because it's pushed heavily in businesses.
Yes, it is.
Right?
Yes, it is.
The value that you hold on someone should not matter one iota what they look like. It should solely matter on the performance and what they bring to the future success of your company.
Meritocracy.
100%. And if you talk about the word meritocracy and how many centuries past, Genghis Khan ran his entire military off of meritocracy. He didn't care how old you are. He didn't care where you were. He said, if you can do the job, if I can trust you to do the job and you perform in the job is yours. Why have we gotten away from that? do we not want the best and brightest people doing the jobs? Or do we want to color the rainbow to make people happy?
Interesting take. I would say, yes, we want the best and the brightest, but do you think that the selection process has always been equitable?
No, it hasn't been.
Okay.
I don't think that race, color, religion, or a photo should ever have anything to do with performance.
But it has.
It has. 100%.
When it comes to selection.
Always.
So in response, like tit for tat, right? Table tennis.
Yeah.
In response to the inequality comes DEI. But now DEI is held as the enemy, the precipitating event of inequality not being acknowledged.
Okay.
So we have DEI as a kind of a response to a precipitating event, heralded as the enemy, not acknowledging the precipitating event.
Okay.
So I believe that it wouldn't be needed if the selection process was across the board, equitable, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So it comes as a response to the inequality that has existed in the selections and procurement process.
But does it need to be something that's forced upon corporations? We'll take the military for instance.
Okay.
Do you think that's the best program to force upon our military? Of, look, we understand, but we got to have some equality in the people doing certain jobs. But if you're not meant to lead and you haven't performed well as a leader, but here's this little 3-letter word that we have, DEI, we need at least 10 of them to fill this.
This is a phenomenal conversation.
Right? I've been in that situation. I've been passed over for promotion based on that.
Hey, really quick. Did you know that most leaders don't have a revenue problem? They have a positioning problem. If you're leading at a high level and know your brand should be working harder for you than it is right now, my team and I offer a curated small number of strategy calls each month. This is not for everyone, but if you're a leader who knows your expertise deserves a bigger platform, and you are open to a working session where we look at your leadership, your positioning, and whether there's a clear path to scale your influence and impact so you can have independence, if that sounds like you and the conversation that you need, you can book a call directly with me here now. Go to www.shanrais.com and click book a call. Once again, it's www.shanrais.com, or just click the link in the show notes. Now back to the show.
We're here with Toby Hansen, and we're approaching a topic that's sensitive in nature, but we're going to be very mature about it because we both agree that the dialogue needs to be had. Toby, there used to be these books. These books were called Opposing Viewpoints. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the series, but it was Opposing Viewpoints.
Nope.
So they would have something like civil rights. And one half of the book was pro. And it had multiple authors who said something in favor of.
Okay.
And then the rest of the book was con. And they had multiple perspectives against. And reading these books, you would just gain the balance of both perspectives, because I don't believe that you understand your own opinion or argument until you understand the opposing viewpoints. You have to have a balanced view. So in response, in thought, right, thinking about it, we're talking about DEI, we're talking about branding, we're talking about the personal brand, we're talking about the authority brand, we're talking about the organizational brand, the business brand, and the brand of the world in this country, right? Macro to micro, individual to organizational. As a person who frequents flights, I want to make sure that the most qualified person is flying the plane.
Okay.
Now, very interesting, and this is the truth, right? I responded a specific kind of way during 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
I responded a certain kind of way during COVID, which is why we created the brand. We created the brand in response to crisis.
Yeah.
No business idea, just natural response. So I choose to sit in first class, because if something goes wrong, I'm close to where I'm needed, to where I can be of assistance. I don't want to sit in the back and have to crawl over people or fight to get to the front, because most people run from a situation and my instinct is to run towards a situation. With that being said, the interesting thing about DEI, when you think about firefighters and police and pilots and engineers and people who are in charge of infrastructure, you want to have the most qualified person, regardless of identity, choice and gender or color of skin, for God's sakes. Like, you want to have the most qualified person in that seat. So I 1000% agree with that.
Yeah.
What about you?
You won't get me to argue that fact. I 100% agree. I talk to my kids about this. Do you ever go to your doctor's office and say, hey, what grades did you get in school?
No, I actually don't.
Do you have a C grade doctor or do you have an A grade doctor?
That's interesting.
They're just a doctor. They graduated.
And you assume,
right?
The best.
You assume, but how do you know? Based off performance. If they're a good doctor, they're probably going to be a good old doctor because they've been doing it for so long. If they're not a good doctor, 9 times out of 10, there's going to be some kind of malpractice. Something's going to happen that's going to push them out of the medical field. But we just walk into the office and go to the doctor. I don't know how well they did in school. Why should anything else be not performance-based? I could care less where they come from, what color they are, purple people eater, doesn't matter. Can you take care of me or my family? You're a doctor. Yes. Perfect. Performance-based.
I agree. It's interesting because places like that, right? I'm reminded of this statement that's said. It's a meme kind of, and you'll probably recall it when I say it. We get on the plane and get comfortable and don't think about it. We get into an Uber or we take a cruise and we just get in our cabin in the hammock and relax and don't think about it. But in our lives, we're hectic and chaotic and we need to have control because we don't trust who's at the helm. Like, it's a religious saying. Like, you trust the pilot, you trust the captain, but you don't trust God to, help you to control and navigate your life. Very interesting. Very interesting conversations with branding at the root. Branding and leadership specifically at the root. So I think it's very interesting where conversations, open dialogue will take a person if they're able to be honest, genuine, reflecting, and not afraid to broach or approach sensitive issues.
I think a lot of times people, when they have these conversations, their biggest fear is that the other person they're talking to is going to change their mind. What if I have the wrong viewpoint?
Yes.
What if I'm on the wrong end of this whole situation? Now, your morals and values and your beliefs drive a lot of how we view things, how we were raised, right? Said my dad was a corrections officer. He told me there are bad people of every color. Don't ever judge somebody the way they look. Right? So as a young age, I never looked at anybody. I judged them by their actions. This day and age, so many things are skewed because of certain attributes that are noticed versus the actions that are taken.
Very, very funny thing that comes to my mind. Me and my wife were watching the news the other night, and they were talking about SNAP benefits, which is like a welfare benefit. And they were saying how the new regime, Make America Healthy Again, is going to ban the use of SNAP benefits. It's a bill right now. It hasn't been passed, but it's a bill that under the Make America Healthy Again, Make America Great Again, one of the things is make America healthy again.
Okay.
And they're saying that the use of the benefit of SNAP, it would be against the law to purchase fattening foods or snacks like potato chips, XYZ. And immediately there's pictures of and depictions of specific demographics, but we know that actually that demographic is the minority. So they're not the majority holders of the SNAP benefit, but immediately there's just a knee-jerk response and an emotional response, like it's an attack on a specific population, when realistically, if you look at it statistically, it's an attack on the same population. Emotions, a lot of times, can erode leadership and perspective.
Very true.
Preconceived notions, a lot of times, can erode and skew understanding and absorbing and evaluating of information and skew the response. And that's not leadership. And that's not, as a matter of fact, it is branding, but it might not be the right branding. Just interesting conversations.
In the past, who is one of the best branding companies, not singular, but across all of items that you could purchase?
That's interesting that you say that. Are you speaking about commodities? Are you talking about products or food?
Products. Who do you think was who do you feel, it's kind of a weird question.
Is it a company?
Multiple companies, right? So what I'm getting at is, when we were kids, the cigarette companies were the best branding companies to draw people in. Cool Joe with the camel and the Marlboro Man. He was macho.
Alive with pleasure.
Right? So they branded, each one of them branded for a demographic.
That's a fact.
Right?
That's a fact.
Why can't we do something similar with leadership? Right? And it's not a demographic based on color, it's a demographic based on the organization that you work in. Large, medium, small, entrepreneur. If we're branding for those, because that's our focus, we go after those to be successful. So, branding has always been this huge thing in America. Huge. Cars.
Ford.
Right? Ford,
T-model,
Chevy.
Right. That's right.
Branding has we've grown up in branding our whole lives. We need to take some of those cliff notes in order to reach the clientele that we want to support. And how do we design our brand to be as attractive to those that we want to help?
That ideal client.
Right.
That ideal
client. How do we package that? How do we really, really create something that they're sitting on the couch with their wife, or they see something come across one of their 17 platforms on their phone that they're watching, and just like
craft the messaging and the imagery.
Just like cigarettes. It's cool. Instantaneous connection.
But instead of negative, positive outcome.
Positive.
Very good, very good. One of the things that I did when I was in my undergrad, when I looked at leadership, and I thought of leadership, because I believe that we think referentially. We think in patterns.
Yep.
If we can see it, we can achieve it. If we have the example, then we can become it.
Yep.
So I was looking at which graduate study to take for my master's degree.
Okay.
I think, no, it wasn't even. It was my bachelor's degree. I had an associate's in human services. So I'm servicing a specific population where I come from, inner city, New York. And I was at the pay grade. I said, ooh, red flags, danger. I looked at a Forbes list of the top 25 careers in psychology. And number 25 was where I was, social services. And I was like, ooh. And it said if I stayed there for 20 years, then I might be able to make $60,000. And I said, well, I won't be able to retire my wife with that. So she won't go for this decision, and neither would I, right? So immediately I shot to the top, and I said, let me look at the top two. The first was a psychologist. The second was a psychiatrist. One clinically diagnosed and prescribed drugs. The other one administered them and doled them out. And I said, well, I'm from Harlem. If I want to sell drugs, I'll just go back to Harlem. I said, I don't need to go to college to do this, and I'll make more money. So I immediately looked at the third, and the third was industrial and organizational psychology. That's where it gets interesting. Different brand. Industrial and organizational psychology. So they started at about 120K per year, which was okay. And then I began to look at the core curriculums, which included words that I was not familiar with. Executive coaching, for leadership development, succession planning, cognitive behavioral. These were things that I was not familiar with, and I thought of leadership being where I'm from, and I said, wow, the leaders that I know are dead. Civil rights, the leaders that we had paid a severe penalty. And then the leaders that we adopted on TV were not the most glamorous and definitely not leaders in business, right? So I thought to myself, I closed my eyes and I tried to think of face or a picture of leadership. And I couldn't come up with one that looked like me. That was a problem for me. I thought of my children. I have 5 children, 4 sons and 1 daughter. So I thought of my youth. I said, wow, if I'm 30 and change, and I've lived all this time, and I close my eyes and I don't see a picture of myself as a leader, my children never will.
That's
and
powerful.
They can't now. Ever since then, Toby, I've been deeply ingrained in leadership and leadership development because it was no longer an opportunity, it became an obligation for me. For my name, brand, the business to become synonymous with that. So that those who come from the same demographic could have a representation that they could see and relate to when they had that 36 years, 35-year-old experience that I had.
Right.
Trying to think of one that they could relate to who kept their core identity. Because sometimes in leadership, especially in business and things of that nature, we'll lose a part of ourselves or we'll sacrifice a part of ourselves to fit into a setting that wasn't created to be welcoming to your authentic origin. It'll make you something that you're not. You'll have to walk a certain kind of way, talk a certain kind of way, act a certain kind of way, conform, right? And I mean, this is why we build businesses. We build businesses sometimes because the way we think and what we want to represent isn't properly represented or supported within organizations that we could exist within. So we create our own. Your thoughts on that?
I was really taken aback by you not being able to picture somebody that looked like you as a leader.
Oh, yeah.
And then your children not being able to. That strikes my heart, right? I try not to be an emotional guy.
Yep.
But I have kids.
Yep.
Right. So I can definitely see where that would tug at your heartstrings.
Oh, yeah. I've been in college ever since.
And I agree with you that we do start things, whatever it might be, because there's either a need for it, a lack of it, or it's not being done the right way. And we want to check those boxes by creating. And that's what entrepreneurship and building a brand and a business is all about. You're filling a need. You're doing it the right way based off of your morals and values, based off of what you've seen. And in this conversation, I went back to, in my head, when you asked me about the current leadership of the country.
Yes.
And I find it so amazing how across our country, people are so invested in who's going to be the president, but they couldn't tell you one county leader where they live. They can't tell you who the education leader is. They can't tell you who runs the programs within their community. They can't tell you any of those people. But the one person that sits in the big White House in DC, thousands of miles or hundreds of miles from where you are, and where it directly impacts you and your family, you can't tell me anything. So where I agree that whoever sits in that big White House and whoever they appoint to do things, it's important for us to do our duty and take that step forward to be a part of that process. It's more important for us to understand what directly affects us and our wives and our children and our family internally than any of those things. And if we can't focus on that, why is that such a big deal?
I agree 1,000%. Accountability and authenticity, which is one of the hugest staples in leadership, right? And going from a macro to a micro, and from an organizational to the individual and the personal brand and the personal responsibility. Because when I think back at it, my mother and father both had leadership roles, right? But I didn't have the correct understanding or definition of it because it just wasn't something that we focused on.
Right.
So my job in this setting is to shift the focus and to stop the scroll, so to say, right? And have conversations that can be interesting, extremely interesting, and difficult for some to have. And bring it back to leadership, brand, business, and like you said, accountability and individual responsibility. Because if we can't lead ourselves, then we don't, you know what I say all the time? I say, you can't afford your own opinion. Right? So if you can't lead yourself away from the donut shop, right? Or the poker table, then how can you afford an opinion on something at such a grand scale when you can't afford the opinion that takes place between the hours of 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning? That's a really big thing, right? So I agree that you don't want to shoot, the first brand you want to shoot at is your own. And you want to make sure that your house is in order so that you can be the leader that people see. And this is how we institute change, because if something doesn't need to be changed, then change won't be inflicted upon.
Yes.
Right? I'm always about self-responsibility, self-accountability, self-regulation, self-discipline, self-awareness, all of those things. Branding has a lot to do with self-worth, self-esteem, and self-perception. What word of advice would you give to a young person looking at this right now that doesn't quite see themselves as a leader?
Be willing to be challenged. There was a lot of times, I have kids, you have kids, right? There's a lot of times that as a young person, even when I was young in the military, it's hard to step out and take responsibility for other people's lives.
Yeah, definitely.
And when they say, hey, you're the next guy in charge to lead a team, right? In the military, and for us, it was a team of 3, team leader, driver, gunner in a truck. You're the next guy that's going to be calling the shots in that truck. Are you ready? So for young people that don't think they have the ability to lead and to take more responsibility, you're not going to know unless you try. We all fail. Everybody will fail. But if you're not willing to take that step forward and say, I am, you're never going to know. and the impact you could have on someone else's life by saying, I am ready, could be something you can't imagine. So don't shuck the opportunity to do something that you're scared to do in life, because it may open a door for your future.
I can't disagree. You know, when at that point in my life, when I looked at the definitions or the core curriculum that fell under industrial and organizational psychology, and I realized that I couldn't relate to a leader, I kind of raised my hand and said, I am, and I will. And I have, ever since then, been deeply ingrained and instrumental in my own way when it comes to leadership, and helped people of all persuasions to further their vision and business and personal brand and revenue and impact and income and independence when it comes to branding and leadership in multiple different industries, from plastic surgery to accounting to human resources, so many different industries, and global. And globally, we have a lot of people that are from multinational continents. So start where you are with what you have. You are all that you need when it comes to personal branding, leadership, business development. Like, you are the corporation, like you are the business, you are an entity, and it starts with you. And you brand you first, and then to the degree in which you do it correctly and impactfully, it resonates, it emanates out. So it starts with you and then it grows outward. So first correct yourself and then correct the things that you see wrong. Brand yourself first and then brand the things that you see wrong. Lead yourself first and then lead the things that you see wrong. Transitioning professional from the military, what is your advice to them?
If you're a young person that did a initial tour 3, 4, or 5 years, and you're coming out of the military, look at what you're passionate about. If you're retiring from the military, don't settle for anything less than what you're passionate about. I say that because a lot of times we come out of the military after 20 years, right? And most people with the 20 years of experience doing something, they have an expectation of what their worth is monetarily.
Okay.
The corporate world does not see it that way. Unless you have a star on your lapel, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, what we feel that we're worth when we retire is not correlated directly with what corporate world feels that we're worth because of what we've done for 20 years. It doesn't directly align, right? So if you retire from the military and you're chasing the money, you may be miserable because you have an expectation of what your worth is. If you come out of the military after retiring, make that clear. There's a difference between retired and not retired, right? Because there's a monetary
incentive
that follows you after a retirement.
That's right.
Do what your heart leads you to do, that you feel every day that when you wake up, you will be happy to go and do. You will look forward to the next day, and the money will come. It's not going to be instantaneous. The money will come. So you can follow the money and more times than not be miserable, or you can follow where your heart leads you and what you really want to do when you grow up in life. Right. And it'll play out the way it's supposed to play out. There's 2 choices.
I feel like you were on the call last night. And we were actually I was actually saying to a client that you want to understand, because they, money was the main problem in your business. Oh, money. Okay, great. Well, money is a reaction. Money is secondary. Value is primary, right? So money is a result of value perceived. So if there's no value perceived, then there can be no money. So when you have a money issue, you don't really have a money issue. You have a value issue, right? You have a value interpretation issue. So there's one of two things. You're either being extremely active in the wrong place, or you're not being extremely active enough. So one of those two things have to change. And then if you are being active enough, you have to determine, am I being active enough in the right place with the right people? And if that's still a negative, then you want to shift direction and make sure that you get active in the right place. After that, it's just patience, right? Because there's a woman for every man and a man for every woman. So at some point, value ongoing will be received. It'll land the right way. And you got to give yourself enough time to actually get good at what you do. So you could see yourself as being massively adding value. You could be in the right place, but you're just not as valuable as you think you are yet, right? So there's self-perception and then there's market reception. So you want to humble your self-perception sometimes and consider market reception. And that's for transitioning professionals, that's for corporate, that's for organizational, individual, entrepreneurial. We've had a pretty good conversation here, Toby.
Pretty good. I want to caveat off the last thing you said is,
please do.
Building your brand and
That's
growing.
right.
If you look at Alexander the Great, right? When he took over and he grew this massive empire.
Empire, that's right.
He wasn't given the empire just because his name was Alexander the Great.
As a matter of fact, he became great through the building of the empire.
He had to fight for his empire. It's no different in your brand. If you want your brand to be great, you have to fight for it. It will take time. It will take effort. You might shed some blood, sweat, and tears.
Very
but at
likely.
the end, build your empire.
That's right. What has your experience been inside the Leadership Leverage?
It's been great. The people that are in there that I'm walking this road with are supportive. They're willing to ask questions. They're willing to receive constructive assessments and be given the tools that they need without thinking they already have the tools. They're also willing to listen if they do something, they have an event or whatever it is, of how they can make it better. There's not a wall put up between them and what's mine. That's and right. How you're viewing what's mine and what I could do better. They're viewing it as, I know that this group of people are trying to help me build my empire. So it's very collaborative, supportive. We have some pretty good conversations in there as well that have definitely, navigated some very touchy situations. But again, it goes back to, as a group, we're respectful and we listen to all sides.
That's right.
To come to, everybody's going to have their own opinion at the end of the day.
That's right.
But we're all willing to listen, which is hard to find in a group setting.
Yes, it is. I tried to create something that would be organic and that would be all-encompassing and would try to meet every single person where they were. So even though I may be not present for all of the internal workings and, the dialogues, I'm glad to know that the spirit in which it was manifested still remains. I try to make sure of that.
I also love how we're all different places within the program.
That's right.
So we can speak truth into people. We can bring them alongside. We can help them. We can tell them successes and failures. We can tell them, hey, this was really good. It helped me. You're struggling with the same thing. Go to this video or go to this. And it will answer the questions that you're looking for. So that the group and the way that the whole platform is designed to come in at different levels magnifies the success because it's not everybody's in the same place. We've all done the same thing already. Having those levels of difference between the people is really beneficial.
Military, the buddy system.
Yeah.
Nobody left behind, right?
That's right.
So as soon as you come in, you find a mentor.
Yeah.
We used to do we would attach accountability partners who had been there longer to pull someone along and kind of tether them together. So, you know, the latter's success was dependent upon the former. So that's how you build leaders and put leaders in charge, even when they think they might not be ready for leadership. That's leadership leverage. What about the 120-day brand specifically? What has your experience been in that program?
You know, there's a lot of information in there that I had no idea about, like the LLCs and, you know, setting certain things up. I'll be honest, completely oblivious to those kind of things. I've never set a business up before. I've never gone through this process. Writing a book, a lot harder than people think it is to just type in some words on a piece of paper.
That's right.
You know, and the steps and the process of how each of those segments of videos are laid out really molds the way that you can develop your business moving forward. It's a huge benefit.
Very good. Thank you very much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
It continues to be.
Anytime.